Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Coffee Chats. Got a very special stand-in guest today. You know her, you love her, you've seen her before, Miss Zara Miller. How are you doing today?
Hello. Well, thank you so much for having me again, Mackenzie. It's a pleasure. I hadn't co-hosted with you yet. This is my
Not
first time.
with me yet, but you've
Not with
co-hosted with
you.
Kyra a couple
Yes,
times.
yes, I have. Yes, with Kyra, yes. But this is a new experience, and I'm very excited. So let's go.
I'm looking forward to this chat today, and Zara. Oh gosh, I'm so used to saying Kyra.
I know. I
I'm
know.
really looking forward to your insight on this one as well, in particular, because I know you have a lot of experience in journalism and publicity. So today we're talking about publicity for authors. A lot of first-time authors or self-published authors are relying on themselves in many cases to be their own PR team. So there's a lot we can learn from all the different kinds of resources that are out there and other people we can find to help us. Anything you want to add before we bring on our guest?
Um, that I can't wait for you to bring on our guest. I guess she's a
Well, here
darling
she
of mine.
is.
She's my baby. She's my baby. That's why I'm so excited. She's my baby.
Welcome,
I raised
Jinny.
her.
I have been coached by Zara, so yes, definitely your baby.
Yes.
Well, welcome, Jinny. We're excited to have you here today. Would you like to introduce yourself to the lovely people?
I'm super excited to be here. I've always loved your chemistry and the show, so it's really cool for me to be part of it. And I'm really hoping and looking forward to sharing from my experience. So, my name is Jinny Uppal. I have about a 20 plus year corporate background. I wrote my first book last year. It came out in December of 2021. It's called Inaction Rethinking the Path to Results. And it's been about 6 months now. So I have done quite a lot of publicity. I did at some point hire a publicist, and we'll talk more about all of the above. And actually, Zara coached me on submitting for awards, considering myself at a point where I was like, why would a first time author win an award? But anyway, there's so much an author can do, first time or otherwise, to get their book out there. So delighted to share whatever I can today. And thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for giving us your time. All right. Well, we have a list of prepared questions for you today, but as always, if the audience members have any additional questions, feel free to ask them in the chat over there,
Bring
and
them
we
on.
will pull them on the
Am I
screen.
pointing? No, I'm pointing the wrong way, aren't I?
That way.
Oh.
Anyway.
All right. First question. How early on in your book journey did you consider publicity? Do you even begin to think about it?
I was part of a book creators program where I got a lot of coaching. And I remember they said, you have to start talking about your book the moment you write or the moment you decide you are going to write the book, which was very bizarre. I have a corporate background, so I'm used to, coming up with a plan, at least having a prototype or something before announcing to the world. So this was very not acceptable to me at first. However, I was coachable, thankfully. And I did start doing some kind of publicity, in the sense I made social media announcements that I'm writing a book. And then progressively, as I went through the journey, I kept hesitating, like, I don't want to do more than this. I don't want to do marketing. But then I would get over myself. And then I stepped up my publicity and marketing to the point of deciding I'm going to hire a publicist because I'm going to do justice to this. So it kind of happened in steps, but pretty early on, yes, I made myself agree to talk about the book and publicize while I'm writing the book, which is a very different pattern compared to most other first-time authors, as I understand it. Would you agree?
Yes, and it can be scary to talk about a thing that you haven't even written yet, but you've started it and it's all there in your brain, but it's kind of scary to be like, I'm doing it. Oh, and then everyone's asking, is it ready yet? Like,
Right.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I actually have a follow-up question for you because this is interesting. So it is definitely a mental barrier for most authors who haven't written the book to start talking about the book. So I'm curious, like, what or who got through to you to start doing that, to start talking about the book early on?
The one thing, and I can't remember where I heard this first, but I was also attending a lot of talks given by other authors. And one of those secret things that nobody knows about authors, we all think authors are experts. They know their stuff and they're writing about something they know.
Mhm.
Whereas most authors, and these were other established authors such as Dan Pink and Simon Sinek sharing their stories, and they were like, really, most author journeys start with a curiosity. It's
Right.
that they're curious about a topic. And becoming aware of the fact, and that was true for me too, I'm curious about the subject matter. I do have a point of view, but I am still curious. That kind of diffuses the tension around publicity, because normally we associate publicity with selling something.
Right.
Whereas if you want to take the tension out of that, which for me was important, I thought of publicity as I'm sharing, I'm
Mhm.
curious, I'm going to invite people to come
Mhm.
along on the journey because I'm genuinely, I don't know. I think there is this point of view, a way of looking at life, but I'm curious, what do other people think? I already knew I was going to do interviews, right? I was going to talk to successful people. So if I'm going to talk to successful people offline, why not just publish it online as well and invite more input? So that helped me kind of take the tension out of publicity as an
Right.
act of selling. It's not, it's sharing.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like engaging in a community, right, Mackenzie? Wouldn't you say?
Yes, and the part where you said sharing resonated with me quite a bit. Sharing rather than selling, and that's the community aspect of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
I underestimated how much people would value being there for my journey. I thought in the beginning that this is an imposition, that I'm sending newsletters, I'm asking for feedback. And people kept thanking me. Thank you for making me part of your journey. And I kept thanking them. Thank you for being part of my journey. So don't underestimate how much people love being there for the journey as the book is being developed. It gives them a sense of pride and ownership and belonging in many ways. And to your point, Mackenzie, you said it well. It's about developing a community. Um, some people call it building an audience, but I think it's really about developing a community of people
Mm.
who have some compatibility with your views on that topic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if social media taught us anything, it is the fact that people love to share.
Yeah.
There's even a button for that. Well, so I guess then my next question would be, how did you brainstorm which platforms to contact? Like, did that spur from your early on engagements in the communities and then you just followed up, or did you contact like a whole new platform that no one has ever heard of? Like, I'm curious about that process.
That's such an interesting question. Before this book, I used to write occasionally, but mostly in trade. I have an e-commerce retail background.
Oh, nice.
I would not call myself a prolific writer. In other words, I did not have a platform.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't very active on social media, as a matter of fact, not even in my personal life, not very active. So if for people who already have a platform, it's easy because you know your platform, you know where you're going to be out there. For people like me, it can be overwhelming, as it was, but at the same time, it's good to have like a new slate.
Mhm.
So I did some education. And the other thing about platforms is it's very fragmented. There are a million ways to put yourself out there. There are so many social media platforms and new ones are coming up all the time. It helps. I would say what helped me was look at where I already am. I do have a LinkedIn presence. I did at that time. I did
Mhm.
have Facebook, Instagram a little bit. So
Right.
in the beginning, I just started with wherever I already was. And as time went by, I got educated on platforms that are created for creators. For example, I discovered something called Substack, which is a way for creators to monetize their content instead of going through third-party mainstream publications.
Right.
So as fragmented as the world can appear, the method to my madness was I'm going to start with where I already have a presence, and I'm going to add something. At the end of the day, managing these platforms or your presence is work. And I was very mindful that I don't want to create new channels if I'm not going to manage them. I don't
Mhm.
want to put two pieces of content and then disappear. So
Right.
I said no to as many ideas as I said yes to. So for example, Medium is a very powerful platform,
It
but I
is.
realized I'm not there and I don't want to spend the effort of building that audience. I
Right.
was willing to build a Substack newsletter, but so I made decisions based on just what I know where I'm going with this book. And it's okay to say no to some of the publications. Like, you don't have to be everywhere. And ideally you shouldn't.
Right. I really like that idea because many authors, just because the profession is writing in and out of itself, um, if we were to generalize, most of us are introverts. I count myself in
So
that.
true. So
Yeah,
true.
right. So we like to guard our privacy, and the idea of putting yourself out there and sharing when you know that could potentially drain you is a new idea. It could be a scary idea. But I like the way that you framed it. Basically, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just look at what we already have. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And my book, interestingly, is about leveraging inaction, strategic inaction to get to results, which is
Right,
saying no to a few things. If
right.
my goal in writing the book was, how to be successful without burning out, and it was important that I not burn out. That would be very ironic if I write a book about not burning out and I burn out.
Yikes.
So yes, I think a lot of content creation and presentation,
Hmm.
especially when you bring in podcasts and stuff like that,
Hmm.
it is not so much the stress because of time, but
Hmm.
it takes something to show up. And for introverts, especially, I'm an introvert. It is tiring to be out there for a podcast interview.
It
It
is this.
takes
It is
something
this.
out of you.
Not to anger anyone, but it could be annoying.
It could be
It could be annoying.
exhausting and frustrating. So you really have to manage your mental energies and your physical bandwidth on how much time are you going to give to these outlets that you're creating and you're putting yourself out there on.
Right. Mackenzie, your thoughts? I'm curious.
Well, so now what I'm wondering, like content creation is one animal, and the other is kind of acquiring press on platforms where you have less control. So
Mhm.
that is more like news outlet features or article features or interviews or podcasts, and that opens up a whole other can of worms. But I guess
Yeah.
kind of my follow-up question to that is, how do you approach those?
Yeah. So the world of publicity, let's divide it into, let me call them channels. So there is online publications, which is your Forbes and your Thrive Global. There is television, which is alive and well. I haven't had cable TV and a television set since 2006. And
Oh.
I was very dismissive of TV, but then a member of my family who's in a marketing agency told me, TV is alive and well. It's a massive audience out there, and there's national TV, there's local TV. So I was like, oh, I should not dismiss that. Radio is another outlet. Podcasts have been emerging for quite a few years. So there's this universe of outlets to choose from, and because the format is very different, it's better to be very clear about what are you choosing and what are you saying no to. Radio is very alive and well because each of these outlets requires a certain kind of an access, a certain message.
Mhm.
TV, I've done as short as 5-minute interviews. And I remember being coached early on by John Saunders, whom you know as well. Writing a book and talking about a book are two different things. Taking a 40, 50,000 word book and you're going to say something about it in 5 minutes on TV.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're writing an article, you have 1,000 words. If you're doing a podcast, you have half an hour.
Yeah.
So it was important for me to be very clear about which format am I opting into and which I'm not, because each will require some work and preparation on my part.
Hmm.
And I realized when it comes to online pubs, I can probably do outreach myself. When it comes to podcasts, I can probably do some because I could send email to a bunch of podcast hosts. Television, I have almost no connections. I wouldn't know where to begin. And that's when I decided that I will do some outreach myself, but the amount of impact or reach I want, I don't think I can pull it off myself. I don't want to kill myself in the process of working, 80-hour weeks. So
Yeah.
that's when I decided to hire a publicist specifically for television, podcasts, and online publications because I wanted to go outside of the pubs where I think I have a connection.
Mm.
And hiring a publicist, however, is an expensive proposition. So you just have to be quite clear you're willing and able to do that.
Is
So
it
yeah,
worth
I think you.
I'm tempted to ask, is it worth it?
Um,
Does it yield results that you were hoping for?
Right. The one thing I'll tell you, it was an education for me. And fortunately, because I have a retail background, I I understood it very quickly. A
Mm-hmm.
publicist will never guarantee you bookings for the money you're giving to them. They are not in a
Correct.
position to do so.
Yes.
In
Yes.
retail, it's called the upper funnel strategy. You are
Mhm,
putting the word out, you're raising awareness. You're not
mhm,
selling. Publicity is not about selling. If you wanted to sell, you would do ads, which is a
mhm.
whole
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
right? You could spend money there. I did not, my focus has been about presenting myself as a thought leader and enhancing my professional career. So presenting myself as a product as much as the book was more important than selling copies. So I didn't do ads.
Mhm.
So then the question becomes, how do you measure ROI? Because it's not going to be sales, it's going to be bookings. But then how do you know what the impact of the booking is?
Mhm.
So this is where, if you're signing up for a publicist, what I will tell you is it is important for you to become quite educated about the world of they operate in and to lean in a lot, which is why I'm saying it isn't just about the money, it's your emotional energy and your attention.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the
Totally.
more, and I remember my publicist telling me over and over again, you are a dream client, because I would get my own bookings and I would participate in pitches that they would present, and I would
Mhm.
come up with ideas of my own.
Yeah.
Apparently, not everybody does that. A lot
No.
of authors think, you might think that, the job, it's the job of the PR agency to do the work and I don't have to do much, but you don't realize that you are, at the end of the day, you're the game, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I've had authors not engage or not show up 100%, then you're not getting the best outfit, because people are here to listen to you.
Mhm.
They
I
may
would
or may
agree.
not buy the book, but they're here to listen to you.
Yeah. I think I would agree. I always tell people when they ask me about whether they should hire publicists, they need to understand that publicists are, among other things, mainly psychologists. So it's almost like you're in a therapy session with them. They need to get to know you in order to be able to pitch you, and they need to know the other side um, of who they're pitching to as well. Because they're always, it's not as much a pitch to a platform as it is to a specific person who operates that platform, and their interests. So yeah, I would agree. And the fact that you are participating, it makes their job easier, because you are basically handling the 50% of their job, which is to know you, to get
Right,
to know your story. And
right,
then the only way that they have to pull is the other 50%, which is to get to know the person they are pitching to. So
right.
that right, so
Yeah,
why
that
do
is
we do
so
that? Why
true.
do we make their jobs easier?
It's
We don't do that here.
I mean, unfortunately, yes, it's not a hands-off engagement. You've got to be very involved. I'll tell you one thing that I learned from the publicist, and now I imagine in the future I might be able to work with more of those virtual assistant PR people,
Mhm.
where I feel more confident about it now. What I learned by working with a publicist is how to ride the news cycle,
Mhm.
how to tune into what is trending as a topic, and how to make your message relevant within the topic.
Mhm.
It so happened that when my book came out in December 2021, things like the Great Resignation and hustle culture had become part of the mainstream narrative. And it seemed like a perfect match to what my book is talking about, which is, to step back, take thoughtful pauses. I might or might not have figured out how to write the perfect pitch. But now that I know how to write the pitch, I know how to tune into the media cycle and then do it myself. So there are some things that a good PR person will help you. They'll help you strategize your message. Like we spoke earlier, out of your 40, 50,000 words, what is it that is relevant to people today? Media cycles are very in the moment. So that is a skill that I believe a professional can bring to the table, which I might not have. But again, you learn from them and then you use it for your next book or whatever.
Right. Mackenzie.
Totally. Do you have any additional tips? Because, step one, write the perfect pitch, which we could talk about that for a while.
Yeah.
Step two, learn how to ride the news cycle, learn what's relevant to people. What are some additional tips that you might add to that?
There is one thing that they almost all asked me, my publicist asked me again and again, and others did as well. What are the 3 takeaways? What are the 5 takeaways? And I did hesitate. I resisted at first because my book is descriptive, not prescriptive. I'm not giving a formula. It's about raising awareness. It's almost in the social psychology genre about this is how we behave, at least understand that.
Right.
In the beginning, I remember scripting a little bit. These are things I must say. I must repeat the name of the book a couple of times. There are a couple of stories from the book that are very powerful, that communicate the point of the book very effectively. Like it's the whole 40,000 in these 3 stories. So again, but the stories might have taken up 2 or 3 pages, so I have to say it in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of scripting, a little bit of rehearsal, a little bit of bullet points. If you do that early on, I think it'll go a long way. At some point, you have to drop all of that. That is also important. You don't want to be too rigid. At some point, I started going with the flow, and I would tell people on podcast interviews, I'm here, so ask me whatever you feel like, and I'll find a way to bring it back to the book if you're going off topic.
Right. Well, what I'm hearing is that basically authors are perfectly capable of handling their publicity if they have the bandwidth and the energy to do it. So ultimately, my question is, and this is a very subjective question, and it'll be probably a very subjective answer. So would you recommend to authors hiring a publicist?
I would recommend it. 1, you are willing and able to spend the money, because it usually is non-trivial. And publicity engagements make sense over a 3 or 4 month period. It doesn't make sense to have a publicist for 2 weeks. You'll get nothing out of it. So the financial commitment is a lot, and you're willing to show up. It is going to be out of your comfort zone. It was for me. And on the flip side, it becomes natural very quickly. Now my publicity contract is over, but I have leftover podcast interviews. So I am not always mentally prepared because I'm not in the zone.
And you've learned a lot from them, haven't you?
I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from them as well. So it's easier for me to now speak a little more impromptu. In the beginning, it was hard, but that's habit. Like writing was hard in the beginning. Writing a chapter was hard, but then I'm like spinning out chapters, right? So like everything else, you'll get the hang of it, but you've really got to be willing to commit the money, time, and emotional energy.
I appreciate that time commitment, because I think a lot of people might think, oh, if I just pay for a publicist, it's something that I can just set and forget. But it's not. It's like a partnership, and it's something then you also have to be willing to show up for when the news outlet comes calling and says, hey, I want to interview you. Like you need to go, yes, of course.
Be ready.
What do you want to know?
And TV especially, I remember they told me on a Friday they want to interview you on a Monday or a Sunday. So you just be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to sit down with them and actually tell them who you are in a nutshell, so that they could compose a perfect pitch.
Right.
Eventually something will take, because something will take eventually, for sure. Like I have never met a person who hired a publicist and did not get any results at all. Someone will take the pitch for sure, but it does take a time commitment. And yeah, the first meetings are for sure like a therapy session. Like you have to reveal sometimes your deepest, darkest secrets for them to use it as a subject line,
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Write a book, and
That's an interesting point you bring up, Zara. Publicists love sensational headlines.
Because the media cycle likes the sensational headline.
And I am a very private person. I'm not. I remember there was this one pitch we were working on. Like in my mind, I know that Great Resignation is an employment trend that's kind of on its way out. I want to talk about something else. What's next in the employment world? Mm-hmm. And I remember they put together a pitch, and I was like, yeah, the pitch sounds good. Or then somebody else said, the title isn't alarmist enough. Let's change it. Let's call it The Great Resignation is Dead. Which is so dramatic. So
it's very melodramatic. It's very days of our lives. It's every pitch is very days of our lives, for sure.
And either you have to be okay with it, or you have to put down your foot and say, I do not want to sensationalize. There were some aspects I do not wish to sensationalize. I'm not going to ride the Ukraine war. Like, I'm not going there. So I remember saying, let's not force something that doesn't belong. So you really have to be very clear about your values and your principles and play from there. And a publicist, on the other hand, will want something to sensationalize. So within the framework of your principles, help them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's sometimes difficult to strike the balance with the publicist because you are paying for a service, and ultimately what they're trying to do is to help you get results that you want. But on the other hand, they are emotionally removed from your values and what you consider right or wrong. So definitely let them know where not to go, because ultimately there are many angles to every story.
Right.
They can always work with you and find the angle that you are okay with sensationalizing.
Right.
But
And you can tell them platforms you do not wish to appear on because
yeah,
they
absolutely.
don't match your
Yeah,
principles
absolutely.
and values. So the good news is a professional publicist understands all this and ideally will ask you upfront, will not wait for you to tell them.
If they're professional, yes.
Yeah, if they're good,
They shouldn't cross the line. No, they shouldn't cross the line.
And
No.
it is possible to then find publicists who are aligned with your own values and mission. There are publicists who are about, women's empowerment, or they might have a niche segment that they work in. So there's a ton of PR agencies out there. So yeah, I suggest to everyone, interview a couple of them before making a decision, especially if it's your first time working with a PR agency, because in the beginning you might not even know what to ask. But then they'll tell you things and you'll get your questions from the answers that they gave you.
For sure.
So for authors who are working on their own, perhaps without a publicist, do you recommend searching for platforms that align with your messaging, or honing in your messaging to align with a platform, or perhaps maybe a combination of both?
It's very, very natural that you'll go through the process very naturally. For example, my book is about, you could argue, my book is a business book, but you could argue it's about well-being. So Thrive Global was a natural fit. There are some people who might say they don't want to have anything to do with, I don't know, Harvard Business School because they are anti-establishment or something. So if you know your values and where you draw the line, I would say it's going to be pretty obvious very quickly where you want to be, where you don't want to be. I will encourage not to dismiss the mainstream publications such as Forbes, even Harvard Business Review, because they tend to be multifaceted. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Consider some of these very mainstream publications. They are good for your resume. It's good for me to say that I've appeared in Forbes. I happen to appreciate Forbes because they do a lot for women, but it's good to say that you appeared in these mainstream publications.
Yeah, for sure. It feels good. Name dropping always feels
It's good publicity. So I remember reading an article about, on the one hand, it means nothing that you appeared on Forbes, because how many people read that article? And it was one article out of a million. But that's not the point. The point is not that how many people read that article. The point is I can talk about it the rest of my life.
Right.
If my book appeared on Forbes, I can put it on my website. So publicity,
I appreciate the honesty, for sure.
It's a multi-dimensional game. You were asking about the ROI on publicity. There isn't a straightforward formula. It is, what are you going to do with the publicity you got for a long time to come? So it's not a one and done. I'll keep talking about Forbes again and again, and maybe I'll use the Forbes connection to get another connection and yet another connection.
And do you have any motivational words of wisdom for authors who think, I'll never be on Forbes? How would that happen?
I will say you are not a very good judge of the value of your book.
People undersell themselves, don't they?
If you feel you don't have, that nobody's going to have you, these mainstream publications aren't going to have you, then you are not, you should fire yourself as a judge of your book. You should hire somebody, a coach or somebody else, to do something about your book. So don't underestimate. And I will tell you, there is value in trying, because even if Forbes doesn't take you, like thus far, Harvard Business Review has not taken me, but it doesn't matter because you're going to probably try again. You're going to try something else. It's like, it's more about putting yourself in that momentum of, I would like my message to get out there, and I'm going to do my best, and you will get a hit here or there. And I have no doubt that if you put in the effort, you will get bookings.
Right. And I will say this from my experience. If they reply to you, even if it's a no, it's a very good indication that you have the right pitch on your hands. You just haven't found the right person, because it is very subjective. Editors in general, producers, editors, they get around 300, 400 emails a day with pitches only. So even if they reply no, that's an indication that you have got their attention. So yeah,
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Getting a no is actually a fabulous thing. That somebody read it.
yeah, somebody read it and someone was like, and they will usually tell you specifically, this is not for me, but thank you. This is this is their most common response. This is not for me. So take it at face value that this is just not for them, and that's it. This is not personal. So
It's no hard feelings. Yep.
No, absolutely no. All right, Jinny. So I would say my next question is, are there any moments in your book that you are particularly proud of? That those moments, maybe you lean into them when talking about the book?
The book journey, you mean? Is that what you meant?
I mean, you could, of course. We will never say no to more content. But particularly, let's say, is there a chapter or is there a passage in your book that you are very proud of, that was maybe painful for you to even write, but you just had to get it out on paper?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm a practitioner of meditation since 2008, and I swear by it. And I have always thought of mind wandering as, a negative psychological phenomena. In the research of my book, I came across a neuroscience research on why mind wandering is a good thing, which was very difficult for me to accept because I drunk the Kool-Aid on mind wandering as a bad, that means distracted mind. And it's in extreme form, it's ADHD. Like, where did this come from? Like, who are these people? It was a very hard thing for me to accept. I had to change my mind. And I wrote the chapter in the style of this was difficult for me. But it makes for it turns out when I share the story that way, that this was hard even for me to accept. But now there is neuroscience research, and I get into that, why mind wandering, when leveraged, is a good thing. It seems to resonate very well because if I put myself in the shoes of the other person listening to me speak, I'm asking them to change their mind about their relationship with action and inaction, right? I'm challenging their thought process. I'm admitting that my own thought process got challenged, and it was not easy.
Right.
So it makes for a good confession of sorts.
Right.
And it appeals to people because I've gone through what I'm asking you to do. Like, consider that you don't have to chase action all the time, that occasional inaction is actually a good thing. So that's been an interesting part of the journey.
Right. And I can relate to that. I mean, pain sells, doesn't it? Because people always tell me, and when I coach them, I'm not really comfortable with showing skin because, there's a saying that sex sells. And then other people tell me, cuteness sells, but I'm not cute. I don't have any kids to show off. And I'm like, pain sells.
Right.
Why do you think that the news are always talking about all these disasters? Like, you rarely hear any good thing on television. Pain sells. It's very relatable. So tune into that to not necessarily to sell, but to get that human connection. And then once you get that human connection, then your book sells. It's sort of like you should strive for connecting with people rather than selling. Like, step 1 is connecting, and then step 2, the sales will come.
Right.
I mean, at least from my experience, the sales will be there once you connect with human beings first.
Right. It's publicity. I think of publicity as a way to sell the message of your book. And if the message resonates, then people are more likely to buy it than
Yep.
not.
Yep.
Totally. Well, I want to remind folks that they are welcome to ask a question in the chat if they do have any burning questions, as we've covered a lot of ground here today. But our final prepared question for you, Miss Jenny, is do you have any final words of wisdom for folks learning about publicity, trying their hand at it, and learning to be comfortable with talking about their book?
Yep.
Don't underestimate how much fun it can be. It can, in the beginning, when I did not do it, when I refused to do it because I don't want to put myself out there, the idea was very intimidating. Given a choice, I'd rather be home with a book. But as I got into it, and again, my commitment to myself was I'm going to do things which are fun, even if I'm challenging myself and pushing myself out of the comfort zone. So don't underestimate how much fun it is to do publicity, to speak to people. It's if you put aside the idea, the ultimate end goal that you're selling, you're just hanging out and having fun conversations, and you're going to make a lot of connections. You're going to make a lot of new friends. So don't underestimate. This is a fun thing to do.
I love that. Yeah. I was
I
trying
need to remind myself of that more.
Yeah. Honestly, same. And I try telling people that I coach that look at it from get a different perspective. But it is intimidating when you hear marketing, promotions and all that stuff. It sounds like a lot of work. So no wonder that we have to. But it is a good reminder that it's fun, and we need those reminders in our lives in a form of our wonderful guest, for example, Jinny. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I want to make myself available if anybody wants to have a follow-up conversation or communication about the techniques, the tactics. I'm here. I'm all for people putting themselves out there. So it's easy to
Yes.
find me. Yeah,
Where are the best
Jinny
places for
Uppal.
people to find you?
Yeah, so my name is, unique. I'm easy to find. So my website is probably the best way to start, JINNYUPPAL.com. There's a way to contact me. LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram are all great ways. And I'm at Jinny Uppal everywhere.
Wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. And I'm looking forward to listening to your other coffee chats.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you, Jinny.
Good stuff today. Any remaining thoughts that you have as a person in the publicity journalism industry?
I think she nailed it on the head, man. It can sometimes even I, as a person who has experience in that world and connections in that role, even I sometimes wonder, why do I do this to myself? So hearing someone say, this is a lot of fun, I definitely need to surround myself with people to remind me of that, because you do need to hear it sometimes from someone else. You know what I mean?
Agreed. When she's like, this is a lot of fun, I'm like,
yeah. But at the end of the day, it is. Most recently, I pitched to a Tint journal, which is an international literary journal, and when I see the email thread of figuring out what the article should be about, what we're interested about, what they're most interested in, and what I'm most interested in talking about. It's such a stimulating conversation. And ultimately, it's about books most of the time with us authors. So it could be fun. That's the thing. But, to get to that point of starting up a conversation with someone, it's
Well, see, for me, the most fun part is the rush of actually seeing the publication go live, where it's like, oh my God, look at my news feature. Oh,
right. Absolutely.
wow.
Oh, yeah.
Riding that high.
Oh yeah. Adrenaline, serotonin, all that good stuff hits your brain. Oh yeah.
Well, you guys, if you have any remaining questions, you are welcome to drop them down in the comments below. We do monitor them. We do check. And if you have any topics that you'd love for us to cover, or any authors you'd love for us to interview, please leave those suggestions in the comments below, or reach out to us on any of the things in the description. We're always open and ready and willing, and we've enjoyed your suggestions so far. So that's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for watching, and see you at the next coffee chat.
Bye-bye.